Hello and welcome to Saturday Night Crafting. Tonight I've got a card where we're going to kind of tone it up first and then we're going to do a toned down version. Or if you like, you can kind of look at it as a feminine versus masculine kind of card. So I'm going to give you two ways to do the same thing essentially. So I'm starting out with some Distress Oxides. I find those super easy to blend with. Probably the easiest kind of inks to blend with. They're very smushable. I don't know how to describe it. They're hybrid ink, so they're a mix between a pigment ink and a dye ink, so there's a lot more wiggle room to work with them. The two colors I'm working with right now are Festive Berries and Wild Honey. They don't really look like they would go together, but they do work really well. So I was trying to go for 3/4 of the card being the red and the other quarter being the yellow and kind of blending them into each other. So really simple ink blending, just kind of going back and forth until you're satisfied with how it looks. And this is where the Distress Oxides are really handy because they do work really well for ink blending and doing your backgrounds. So I'm all done this one here. I'm going to get it to dry, leave it to the side to dry for a bit. I'm going to use my Nestables Hearts dies, and I've got these stitched ones and the normal ones, so I'm going to use the stitch ones. So it's got a little bit of stitch detailing around the outside edge, and I'm just going to go ahead and die cut myself a plain white heart out of the white cardstock. And then I'll come in and add on some of my ink. So I'm not doing any ink blending here, I'm just applying the color. And I'm just going to apply that over the heart to give a nice even background. And then we can come in and stamp some details on. So to keep the same colors, I'm going to use the Festive Berries again. And I've got this cute little stamp set which it does a nice little bit of background stamping. I'll link everything I can down below. If they're not available, I will state they're not available, but I'll try and link all the products for you if you want to check any of them out. So I've got all my butterflies on. I'm going to very carefully hold it now so I don't smudge any of that ink because it is still a bit damp. And I'm just going to add some of the same orange or the same yellow, the Wild Honey, to the outside edge of my heart to kind of blend those colors together again to go on the front of my card. Now I do make sure to fully dry everything before I do anything further. So this is fully dry now. I'm going to trim it down so that it will stand off my card a little bit and I'll have a nice border. So I've got my plain card base and I'm going to use my Festive Berries, and you could use an ink blending brush which would apply the ink on a little bit lighter, but I'm lazy and so I'm just dragging my ink pad across the edges. So I've got a nice beautiful border that will match my top of my card that we did with our ink blending. Now again, very, very important to keep drying throughout the process because the Distress Oxides are damp for a lot longer than most inks. I've got an embossing folder and I thought it'd be nice to add a bit of character to that plain piece of card or an ink blended bit of card. So I'm going to pop that in there and run it through my die cutting machine and get a beautiful embossed background look. And I do this on both of the cards. If I can find this embossing folder for you, I will link it below. I think it is from Made to Surprise. Now, when you emboss your card, sometimes your card can crack a little, depending on if you get your sandwich right or not in your die cutting machine. To fix that, just go ahead with your ink blending brushes and add that color back on top where those cracks form. I've got some twine here. This is from AliExpress. If it's still available, I'll link it for you as well. It's one of my favorite little linen threads and it's lasted me years. Now this is from the same range as those stamps I first used, the little butterflies. This is all kind of their banners and tags set. So I'll link those down below. I think you can buy them in bundles. But I'm going to go ahead and sort of color my banner in. And so I've added some of my ink to my ink blending mat. And I'm going to pick it up with my paintbrush. And I use a bit of water to kind of make it more movable. I don't think I've got the right terms today, but never mind. I got my Festive Berries again to kind of tie in. And I'm just using the Festive Berries to kind of darken those little shaded areas. There's nothing exciting about this. You could just take your ink pad and drag it over the top if you felt like. It doesn't really matter. I'm just using that little banner to kind of add my sentiment to the top. So once everything's dry and we've got everything ready, we can start assembling the card. So I'm going to glue down everything using various adhesives. So I used liquid glue to put my panel on so I could wiggle it into place. And now I'm going to use a glue dot and kind of trick the eye a bit and make sure that my string's going to stay where I want it to stay. So I take my little glue dot, pop it in the middle of where I want to start from, and then I just wrap my twine all around the heart every which way I want to go, but I'm touching it into that glue dot behind so that it's not going to shift around when I go to put it on the card, and it's not going to shift around when I'm doing this wrapping. Now, to kind of give the illusion that I had a little bit of string left over, I'm going to pop a bit of glue, again, another glue dot on the back, and I'm going to cut a piece of string that I can then wrap around to tie off the other end that's still hanging there. So I can make a little nice knotted kind of bow thing on the front, but I don't actually have the end I originally started with because I stuck it to that glue dot, so I'm going to fake it and stick another piece on there. And no one's ever going to see the back, so they're never going to know that that's not just one big long piece of string. It's actually two, and who cares? So just go ahead and tie a knot first so it doesn't start unraveling again on me, and then tie my little bow. And I don't know why, but I can't get bows straight unless I tie them upside down. I'm going to apply some foam dots to the back and avoid the areas where the string is, and I'm putting the foam on because obviously the string adds some bulk, so the foam kind of lifts it up and allows it to lie flat without bubbling up because I've got all that twine behind and the glue dots. So I go ahead and stick that on. Now I can stamp my sentiment onto my little banner. And I've got my stamp platform with my little sticky mat underneath. The sticky mat is just from Amazon. I'll put that in the description box. You can have a look and see if you can find it anywhere locally. I know that Amazon in the States sell it and Amazon in the UK sell it. It's just a really cheap low-tack mat. Now you can see here, Distress Oxides aren't really meant for stamping, so I stamped it down, and these are silicone stamps, and it didn't stamp very clearly or very nicely. So the trick is you can take VersaFine ink, the stuff that you would use for embossing, apply that onto your stamp, and then your ink will stick much better to your stamp once that VersaMark is on there. I do wipe a little bit of the VersaMark off, just so it doesn't wreck my ink pad at all. These are one of my newest finds from Amazon. You get this whopping pack, I think there's 10 in there, of these little strips, and they are perfect for putting sentiments down. I was so excited when I found this on Amazon. It was a really good price point, and you get an absolute ton. So I'm just sticking some foam tape on the back of that banner and sticking it to the front of my heart. And I felt like it needed some bling. So obviously I want this to be a very girly looking card, so I'm going to add some bling. My bling comes from Alina's shop on AliExpress. And I just picked two colors that kind of match the two colors I'm already using to keep it all going the same. I've got my homemade Picky Up tool, which is just a stylus with a blue tack stuck on the end. Really, really easy, really effective. What I like to do is I go ahead and put all my glue down, and then I start picking up my gems and plopping them on. And I tried to go for the random effect, so some of them are close to the bottom of the little diamond, some are to the side, some are to the top, bottom. I just kind of scattered where my glue dots would go, but they're all inside those little diamonds in the background. And when we're done, we have this. So really quick, really easy, and really pretty. I love all the sparkles. So now we can go ahead and tone it down and do a more sort of masculine looking one that isn't quite so blingy and in your face. So again, I'm going to start by doing some ink blending. I've got Squeezed Lemonade and Mowed Lawn for these ones. And again, I'm going for sort of 3/4 and 1/4. So I've gone ahead with the yellow to go a bit more over, but I'm going to pull that green right over the top. This time I'm using the labels from that same stamp and die set that I showed you in the first card, but these are the bigger labels, and they're quite cool because they come with the outline as well as the topper for it. Again, I'm going to trim down my card base, but this time I'm only going to trim down the long edge so that my sides will stretch all the way, and I've just got the top and the bottom that are going to show through. Just a different way to do a card panel on the front. Now this time I'm going to take this green VersaFine Claire ink. I just liked how dark it was. I thought it contrasted nicely with the two colors that I chose. And I'm going to use that same ink to do my stamping in a minute. This time I'm going to take some water and I'm going to do some splashes on the background. With the oxides, they react to water, so you get this really cool effect, and you can really see some different kind of color tones when you apply it. Obviously, the more water or the bigger splotches, the more color that will lift. And again, I'm going to use the embossing folder to get that same kind of nice background that I had before. It's a great way to have more interest to your card. And now we can go ahead and start putting our card together. So I'm going to go ahead and use my liquid glue again so I can shift it right into place exactly where I want it to go on my card base and get that nice even border on the top and the bottom. And then I decided to take a strip of card to kind of run across the card. So I've used the Mowed Lawn again. to color the background of this, and then that way it blends in nicely with the card base itself and the ink blending we did. But I want it to pop a little bit. I don't want it to blend in too much. So I'm taking this stamp set here, which I bought from Craft Stash a couple months ago, so if it's available, again, I'll link it for you. And I'm just going to stamp the same yellow, the Squeeze Lemonade, and that way I've got a bit of a pattern in the design, but it's not taking away from my background. Again, you're going to use the same trick, apply some glue dots onto the back of that little strip, wrap some twine around, and I'm kind of going for angled twine, not straight across. I'm trying to go from the top to the bottom on the other side, if that makes sense. I'll apply some adhesive tape along the back of it. My string kind of runs along most of it, so I'm not going to bother with foam tape. I'm just going to use my sticky tape over top of the thread and stick that down on my card. So now I got a little bit more interest going on. I've die cut out in white card the 2 dies I shared with you a minute ago, and I used that same VersaFine Clair green ink to stamp my sentiment. We can now go ahead and assemble the card and then add a little bit of detail at the end. So I'm just going to glue these straight on top of each other and then stick that sentiment right on top of my card. Because I've got that string and that extra little bit, I'm going to use the foam pads on the top, a bit of glue in the middle, and a little bit of foam pads at the bottom of this little embellishment so that it all nicely lays flat on the front of my card. You could stop here if you felt like that was enough and you didn't want to do any more. But of course I want to add some sort of bling to it. So I went with some clear flat back gems, water droplet thingies. And all I'm going to do is use the smallest size. I think there's 5 sizes in these little jars. And I'm going to apply 3 dots on the top of the little panel and 3 dots on the bottom and the opposite ends. And I just go ahead and use my sticky pick it up tool again and plop those on there. And because I'm using liquid glue, I can then shift them and wiggle them right into place if I didn't get them quite so centered when I was getting them on. And that finishes off that card. So a quick and easy way to do pretty much the same thing but get a different look in the end. I hope you enjoyed this one with me tonight, and I hope you have a go as well. I have got a Facebook group if you want to share it with me over there, or share any of your other makes with quite a lovely community. I'll put that link down in the description box for you, and you can pop over and join us. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Bye.